Thank you very much, everyone, for being here today with us. There's quite a few people in the room and some more people are still coming in. So I'd like to really thank you for taking the time to join us today. I'm just going to give a brief introduction to the workshop's objectives, and then I'll let you know who the next speaker is going to be. So the primary objective of this online workshop is to foster solidarity and to mobilize international voluntary service organizations, but also people all around the world, because you don't have to be part of an organization, you can be an individual, in the struggle against racism and apartheid in Palestine. So the workshop aims to provide an in-depth understanding of the conditions in Palestine, to highlight the role of international voluntary service organizations in supporting Palestinian rights and combating systemic discrimination, to share lived experiences of Palestinians, emphasizing the realities of daily life under occupation and in the diaspora, to discuss the influence of technology and media in activism, focusing on the use of digital tools to promote awareness and solidarity, and to develop actionable strategies for promoting accountability and advocacy for policy changes. So we're also going to listen about the case with the ICC and the position of different countries in relation to Palestine. And with that, I would just like to hand you over to the president of CCIVS, Mr. Rutherford Maruta, who is also the national coordinator of Zimbabwe Work Camps Association. So Rutherford, please take the floor.
Thank you very much, Vicky, for those kind words. Let me also take this opportunity to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our global audience. And let me welcome you to this critical webinar on International Voluntary Service Action for Justice, Solidarity in the Struggle Against Racism, Apartheid in Palestine. My name is Rutherford Maruta, and I'm honored to officially open this important discussion. As we gather virtual today, we acknowledge the diverse background and experience that brings us together. We are united in our commitment to justice, equality, and human rights. This webinar is a call to action, a moment to mobilize our collective efforts in solidarity with the Palestinian people and against an unjust system of racism and apartheid. We will explore the power of international voluntary service advocacy, activism in supporting Palestinian struggle for freedom and self-determination. Over the next 2 hours, we will hear from esteemed speakers, experts, and activists who are very grateful to have this. We are very grateful to have them with us. We will also share their insight, experience, and strategies for effective solidarity. We will also discuss the complicity of racism and apartheid, the impact of international voluntarism, and the ways we can collectively work together towards a more just and equitable world. As we speak, ethnic cleaning and genocide is taking place in Palestine. Well, the world looks on. The number we are hearing of people massacred is beyond belief, and it's heartbreaking. The Lancet Medical Journal, in its recent publication, suggests that an estimate of deaths attributed to this genocide in Gaza is up to over 186,000, or around 79% of the total population of the Gaza Strip. Before we start this event, I would like to invite you to hold a minute of silence in memory of those who have been massacred and those who are undergoing deep trauma every day as they fight for survival. So let us have a minute of silence. Okay, I think our minute of silence is up now. Let us embrace this opportunity to learn, to grow, and take action together. Thank you for joining us on this journey toward the justice and solidarity which we can do together. Thank you so much. Let me also hand over the time to Vicky so that you can tell us the next speaker.
Thank you, Rutherford. So I will,
Vicky?
yeah, thank you, Rutherford. Thank you very much for that introduction. I'm just going to hand the floor then to Claudia, who's going to explain a bit about the technical needs of the platform today.
Hello, welcome. As you can see, the webinar is being recorded, but also only the panelists are visible, so you don't have to worry about being recorded yourself. Also, at the bottom of the Zoom, you should be able to find the Q&A section. There you can ask questions. You can do it anytime, but the questions will be answered only at the end. There will be a moment after all the panelists have introduced themselves and gave their presentation. There will be a moment for a Q&A. So please, when you send a question, say to which panelist it is addressed, so we can ask to the right people. And also, please use respectful language. Any question that has aggressive or disrespectful language will be dismissed and will not be answered. Yeah, and more technical things will come at the end.
Thank you very much, Claudia. And I would just like to introduce you to our first speaker. So it's Mr. Adli Dana, who serves as the Executive Director of the Palestinian Center for Media Research and Development, and as a Consulting Program Manager for the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation. Additionally, Mr. Dana has held leadership positions, including the President of Youth Action for Peace from 2006 until 2008. He's also founder, co-founder, and former board member of several networks and associations dedicated to youth empowerment and international voluntary service on a national, regional, and international scale. So he is well equipped to speak to you about the world of international voluntary service and also about the situation in Palestine. So I hand the floor to Adli. Thank you.
Vicky, thank you all for joining our very interesting seminar that comes on a very important time in the life of the Palestinian struggle and strive for liberation and self-determination. I'm sharing my. Can you see my screen? Is it? Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, I've been asked to speak in 10 minutes and summarize the whole history of the apartheid and genocide situation in Palestine. I'll try to be precise on time because we have other panelists who will join us soon, and they will cover other issues. Well, contrary to what people think that the apartheid and the genocide in Palestine has started in October 7, 2023, last year. Contrary to that, actually the genocide and the apartheid, situation in Palestine goes back to the late 19th century, early 20th century. It started actually as the first legal pathway through the Arthur Balfour Declaration in 1917, after Britain and France won the First World War and divided the Arab world into small states and countries. And he gave this declaration to the Jewish people in England, promising them of a land a national homeland in Palestine. This was actually marked the first legal pathway. There has been other attempts before to declare a Jewish state somewhere in different areas in the world, but that was the first, let's say, sign for establishing a Jewish state or an Israeli state or a settlers colonization status in Palestine. This promise, was faced with very major obstacle or a challenge, which was the natives who existed on this land, and how can we get rid of them? You cannot simply exterminate or terminate the whole nation and replace them with other nation, with other type of people and living on this geographical place. So this promise faced this challenge. Then the British, together with the Zionist movement at that time, they started what they wanted to promote as a motto, that this is a land without people for people without land. And this motto was the first indicator of their ethnic cleansing intentions. And there has been two ways immigration, like on one side, immigration of the Jewish people from Europe in ships, in planes, by road, encouraged by the British mandate authorities at that time when Palestine was under the mandate. At the same time, the British, together with the Zionist gangs, existing in Palestine, started to intimidate and threaten and execute some massacres against the Palestinian peasants and Palestinian, mainly in the rural areas, and to kick them outside. So there was an immigration into Palestine and expulsion of the Palestinian native outside. Now, to fulfill this dream of the promise, the Zionist movement, together with the British mandate authorities at that time, they put together an ethnic cleansing strategy. In order to have a strategy, you need to fabricate, or you need to base it on a narrative that is acceptable for the outside world, and could be like the argument or a narration giving the Jews, let's say, the Jewish people, the right of existing on the land of Palestine. No, so they fabricated a narrative based on three main irrational, racist, and exclusionist pillars. The first one was the dehumanization of the natives. The second one is the divine promise. And the third one was the anti-Arab and anti-Islam propaganda, and so on. Demonizing the natives, they started to feature the Palestinians or show that the natives as savage, filthy, uneducated, troublemakers, violent, whatsoever. And this has been, promoted through media and through other means. The other pillar of the strategy was the divine promise, that they created this myth that the God has promised this land for the Jewish people, and that it's time for them to come back after 3,000 years in the diaspora and of persecution around the world. And this land has been promised for them by the God, so it's time for them to come back. The other one, and it was really very irrational, like to say something like that. It's simply like, if the Chinese come tomorrow and say we were in Palestine 7,000 years ago, and the God, promised us to be back, will the Israelis, will the Jewish say that, this is, yes, we will give it to you, and yeah, we believe your argument? This is really one of the irrational, pillars that they have managed. The other one is the anti-Arab and anti-Islam propaganda through the education systems, media, through movies. We all see how they show the Palestinians in the media, and in their discrimination policies of these states. Like this, these are like violent people. It's like the way they used to describe and show the Red Indians in the native the Native Americans in the American continent, and the colored people in Africa. So like as savage, anti-civilized, non-civilized, not modernized, primitive, filthy, whatever you name it. So they built all this strategy, in order to justify their ethnic cleansing of the natives in these countries. Now, talking about the present conditions, I want to talk about the 76 years of the Nakba, which marks the independence of the so-called Israeli state, and the 50 years of occupation of the rest of Palestine. Ever since the declaration of Israel in 1948, the ethnic cleansing measures and process did not stop at all. In 1948, total of 3/4 of the population of Palestine being expelled out, literally by committing genocide, committing massacres in Palestinian towns, villages, areas, in different areas and in cities, and like about 750,000 Palestinians have been expelled from their lands, and the rest of the Palestinians who remain in the country, in their homes and their towns, they've been under martial laws until 1957. So for 10 years, almost 10 years, they were under curfew and not allowed to really practice any type of life. Add to that, confiscating of lands and confiscating of properties, and replacing the natives by immigrants coming from Europe. On the other hand, in 1957, 57 years ago, in 1967, Israel occupied the rest of Palestine, which is East Jerusalem, West Bank, and Gaza. And ever since, everybody was talking about this area as OPT, occupied Palestinian territories, and it's been legal. It's been said and considered as an illegal occupation until today. And we're not talking about a military occupation. We are talking about colonialism and settler colonialism, type of occupation that basically want to replace the people who are living also in the West Bank and in Jerusalem and Gaza with immigrants coming from abroad. Now, the Palestinians since 1917, they have been striving for freedom, and they've been resisting all forms of aggression and occupation by the British mandate, by the Israeli, by the Zionist gangs at that time, militias, and later on by the Israeli state. Now, in order to really deform the type of resistance that the Palestinians, conduct, of course, it's been labeled as terrorism, and there has been lots of complicity in countries and states, labeling the Palestinian resistance as an act of terrorism. What we all know that, what is terrorism for one side, it's called freedom resistance for the other. Now, the Israelis, ever since, the occupation, ever since 1948, they have imposed measures to cleanse the country from its natives. These measures took the shape of different shapes and different components, among them expelling the people from deportation of people, intimidating the people, putting regime like a permit regime for the Palestinians to move from one place to another. We'll talk about this later on in the presentation. Now, October 23, Israel started the genocidal war on Gaza. Gaza has been under blockade since 17 years by that time, since 2007. Israel controlled every single item that comes into the Gaza Strip, into the occupied Gaza Strip, and it is actually considered as the largest open prison on earth, where people mobility is restricted, controlled, and dominated by the Israeli army, by air, by sea, and by land, and including the passage between Egypt. And even Israel, at that time, there has been a United Nations mechanism. They call it the Gaza Reconstruction Mechanism, GRM, where the Israelis have a list of items that is not allowed into Gaza. Any item that could have dual usage, like metal, all sorts of screws, drillers, excavators, whatsoever, were not allowed into, including that Israel limited the number of calories allowed into Gaza. For 17 years, Gaza has been under blockade, and the people really exploded, and the resistance in Gaza, they just felt that, okay, that's it and enough. And ever since now, about 9 months, since 9 months now, Israel constantly is bombarding Gaza, as we all see on TV right now, without giving any attention or any consideration to the world, to the international community, to the United Nations Council resolution, or the Security Council, all the calls to ceasefire and to stop the genocide, including like enforcing starvation against the Palestinians. We all know this. We watch this news on daily basis and hourly basis, coming live on TV and live on social media coming out of Gaza, and we can see that. And this is the continuation of the Israeli intention to ethnically cleanse the country from its natives. And we all have heard the voices of the Israeli government and many other factions in Israel, asking to resettle in Gaza and build new colonies in Gaza after carpet bombing it and getting rid of everybody in Gaza. So this is actually a live evidence that Israel's intention from the beginning was to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians. Now, Israel is committing these crimes against humanity as an apartheid state, and this has been, documented and researched by by the Human Rights Watch, by B'Tselem, which is an Israeli human rights organization, by the United Nations, by Amnesty International. So many organizations have described what Israel is doing is basically an ethnic cleansing and an apartheid through the different measures that the Israelis are doing. And we don't need really to elaborate a lot on that. We can see this live on media those days. Now, about the Palestinian diaspora, as I said, between the immigration and the expulsion of the Palestinians started in the 1920s and upwards through the intimidation. And, we had now about 7 million Palestinians living in the diaspora in Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, and some parts of the West Bank. So we have about 7 million Palestinians in the diaspora living in very inhuman circumstances and living conditions where they lack the basic services of a human that would keep the human dignity of the people. The insights on the systematic discrimination and segregation under the Israeli occupation. The systematic discrimination and segregation is apartheid, and it is characterized by the institutionalized regime of racial domination. This manifests in various ways. Now, we have like what the Israelis are doing in order to systemize the discrimination, and they have a well-organized system and strategy, on how to sustain the segregation and the apartheid. The first one is through legal discrimination. Israel has any Palestinian living, like for instance, how we define apartheid. It's when two type of nations of people live on the same geographical land, and they have two different laws that controls or dominates or organizes their type of life. This means it's apartheid, when there is a domination of one ethnicity against the other one. And this is exactly the laws in the West Bank. For instance, for me as a Palestinian, if I get in any trouble, with the Israeli army, I will be sentenced, I will be prosecuted according to military Israeli courts. While if an Israeli settler who's illegally on our land, if he commits any crime, he will be prosecuted according to the civil Israeli law inside Israel. The other law that the Israelis have that shows their discrimination, systematic discrimination, legal discrimination, is the nation-state law that Israel ratified a few years ago. It tells that the land of Israel is the homeland of only Jews, of Jewish people, of Jewish origin, and the others have no such a right at all. So this is a systematic law discrimination by law. The other insights of the systematic discrimination is the land and housing policies, like demolition versus construction. As you see, Israel is continuing to demolish and confiscate Palestinian lands, like issuing laws and legal statements, mainly military ones in the West Bank and in Jerusalem. At the same time, demolishing the Palestinian homes that are built with lack of permit. And it's worth mentioning here that to have a built permit, for a house or apartment is almost impossible on your land. You can find people with lots of lands, but they are unable to build one toilet in these lands. And Israel actually confiscated this land all the time and put all the restrictions possible to make it impossible for people to build that. So any person who builds a house could be subject to demolition. At the same time, they confiscate the Palestinian lands and build settlements for the Israelis, and they also control all the land zoning and the landscape zoning of the occupied Palestinian territories. The other systematic discrimination is the segregation and movement restrictions. This picture actually is from my city in Hebron. You can see that the Jews have a road and the Palestinians have a road. Like this narrow alley here is for the Palestinians to walk, while the other one is for the Jews. So we are living this kind of segregation and the movement restrictions. And these movement restrictions could be seen through the checkpoints, the separation wall, the borders control of the Israelis, they control who comes in or out from the country, and the permit regime that requires any Palestinian to have a permit in order to go from one city to another, mainly to go to Jerusalem, to occupy Jerusalem. Okay, other insights of systematic discrimination and segregation. We have the economic inequity. They have very racist economic policies, the blockades of Gaza, the blockade of products. The flow of products and goods is controlled by the Israelis. All the ports are controlled by Israel. Taxation, they collect the taxation on our behalf, and they collect the customs, and they make clearance with the Palestinian Authority at the end of the month. The other form of segregation of the occupation is the violence and military occupation, the execution of people, the detention, the settlers' violence, curfews, closure, deportation, and torture. Role of IVS organizations in Palestine. Historically, they played a very significant role in supporting the Palestinian struggle for justice and self-determination. IVS organizations facilitate the international solidarity by bringing volunteers from around the world to witness and work in Palestinian communities. I think I'm running out of time, and I've been notified to stop, but these are the key functions of the IVS organization: raising awareness, humanitarian assistance, protective presence, empowering local communities. Now, responsibility and accountability, I think, recognizing the global community responsibility to stand in solidarity with Palestinians. This includes understanding our roles in perpetuating or challenging systems, systematic oppression, and taking active steps to support justice and equality. Accountability, holding those who perpetuate genocide, ethnic cleansing, discrimination, and segregation accountable for their actions. This involves advocating for policy changes, supporting legal actions against human rights violators, and ensuring that international laws and norms are upheld. Thank you very much, and sorry for being that late.
Okay, thank you, Adli. Thanks very much for speaking and sharing all that with us. And with that, then, we will hand the floor over to Ms. Mona Shtaya, who is the Director for Digital Action in the Middle East and North Africa.
Is she with us? Is Mona with us?
Yeah, she is with us. So did you want to say a couple of words, Adli?
Yes, can you hold just 1 second? Welcome, Mona. Mona is a great friend of mine. We participated together with a program with Rosa Luxemburg. She's an amazing digital media professional. Mona serves as the campaigns and partnerships manager, MENA region, and corporate engagement lead at Digital Action. She is also a 2024 Migration and Technology Monitor Fellow and a non-resident scholar for the Middle East Institute in Palestine, Israel program. Previously, she served as a non-resident fellow at the Tahrir Institute for Middle East Policy, focusing on surveillance and digital rights in the MENA region. She also held a position as non-resident scholar for the Middle East Institute in the Cybersecurity and Emerging Technology program. Welcome, Mona. Thank you for joining us, and we are looking forward to hearing what you have to advise us. Thank you, Habibti.
Thank you so much, Adli. Thanks, everyone. And hi, everyone. It's really an honor to be with you today to speak about more digital activism and the involvement of the whole new technology and the ongoing genocide in Gaza Strip. And yeah, to start with, I'd like to, because I've heard Adli and how he set the scene about what's going on in Palestine, and maybe it's worth it also to mention that the whole, like, Palestinians have been struggling with the censorship and surveillance technologies for quite a long time in Palestine. I know many people are speaking about what's going on since October 7th, but this kind of censorship and even the development and deployment of surveillance technologies on the Palestinian land and testing that on Palestinian people has been happening for quite a long time. So it's not something new, but now with the ongoing genocide, it's exacerbating that, it's worsening the situation, it's bringing us or it's putting us in a situation where we are thinking about how this is AI facilitated genocide or technology facilitated genocide. And just like also to set the scene about that, maybe I can start speaking about the online censorship that Palestinians have been facing, because I was asked to speak about digital activism and how we usually speak about that with the international audience and how that helps us to build the solidarity globally. So we can't start speaking about the digital solidarity without thinking or mentioning how people are facing censorship online. For quite a long time, and I can be very particular about the date, since 2015, the Israeli government, they established something called the Israeli Cyber Unit, where this Israeli Cyber Unit is monitoring and documenting the digital spaces, and they have been raising or sending hundreds of requests, tens of thousands of requests to the social media platforms annually. And when I say request, it means a communication message that has hundreds or maybe thousands of posts to take down those posts. And for quite a long time, or since 2015, they have been able to take down massive amount of content about Palestine, imposing censorship on Palestinian voices, Palestinian narrative, especially when it comes to the Palestinian Arabic content. Since October 7th, we've been witnessing this censorship on another level. It is happening, but it's not only happening against Palestinian Arabic content, it's happening against Palestine-related content regarding the language. So whether this content has been spread in English, Spanish, French, or whatever, or even in Arabic, you might be facing some kind of censorship. And when I say the word censorship, it could be content takedown, it could be account suspension, it could be post suspension, and sometimes there's something called shadow banning, which is reducing or restricting your reachability and visibility. So your content will stay online, however, not much people will be able to see your content organically because you are shadow banned. Your content doesn't violate the community standards, but they deprioritize that because they don't want, or they are doing that on purpose so they can silence the voices. And some people might be wondering if those arguments have been approved or not. I would like to say that back in May 2021, when we have the May events, and at that time, Israel attacked Gaza for 12 days, and they were also trying to forcibly displace people in Sheikh Jarrah, among other Jerusalemite neighborhoods. We also were having the same arguments, and it was very intensified at that time. And at that time, we were demanding Meta, among other social media platforms, to have some human rights due diligence on how they are moderating Palestinian Arabic content versus how they are moderating Israeli Hebrew content. The results of that human rights due diligence came out in September 2022, and it confirmed our arguments that Palestinian Arabic content is largely moderated, and Meta is biased against Palestinian content. And the Israeli Hebrew content is barely moderated, which basically means that Palestinians are not able to practice their right to free speech, their right to gathering and assembly, their right to under-discrimination, and the right to political participation. However, the Israeli hate speech, violent speech, and incitement against Palestinians stays online. And since then, we were calling on them to implement the recommendations that came as a result out of that human rights due diligence. And unfortunately, literally nothing, not like we didn't have like major things happen to stop what we are witnessing now with this genocide, intensified genocide. And even one of the things that they claim to do is to develop the Hebrew classifiers, hate speech or hate speech classifiers. And in September 2023, they reported that they've developed that. However, in October, when the war started, we figured out that the whole hate speech and incitement in Hebrew language is still online. As a result of that, Wall Street Journal conducted an investigation to prove that they literally developed the classifier. However, they didn't train that with the needed data, so it's not working. And develop something without having it efficiently or effectively working means that you don't have it, which basically leads to have more hate speech, incitement, and violent speech against Palestinians online that is systematically and substantially contributing to label Palestinians, stereotype them, and dehumanize Palestinians, describing Palestinians as being less than human beings. And we are seeing that from different Israeli officials online, and a lot of Israeli extremists, including the settlers online, whenever they are calling to burn certain cities, such as happened in Huwara earlier last year in 2023, even before the war. That was also as a result of the incitement, hate speech, and violent speech online. So with that scene setting, I'd like to say that since the beginning of this war, we are seeing more in-depth and systematic discrimination. I've said that it's not only about Arabic language, Palestinian Arabic, it's more about Palestine related, but also we've seen how the AI generation, the generative AI is also involved, because some people were trying, for example, to use the AI generated stickers on WhatsApp to look for a sticker about Palestinian Muslim boy. And at that time, they found a sticker for a boy who's holding a gun. And then they were looking for Israeli boy, and they find a boy who's playing or who's smiling or something like that. And then people were trying Israeli soldier, and they also find a soldier with a uniform, but he was smiling. He didn't hold any guns, which basically always put Palestinians in a space where we are always holding guns. Or in another case, we are compared also with terrorists, because in another case on Instagram, there's this one user who had the word Palestinian and then the flag of Palestine and then Alhamdulillah, which means thanks to God or praise to God next to his name. And you know that we do have this button for automatic translation of your bio. And when he was clicking on that, he found the automatic translation for that was Palestinian terrorist, which basically means that those platforms and their biased data sets that they use to train their machine learning system and their AI-generated content is basically biased. It discriminates systematically against Palestinians. It also dehumanizes Palestinians, because if Palestinians are always terrorists, or if they are always only carrying guns, then what kind of image that we are creating about Palestinians? To not limit that, we don't like look at that angle only with Meta, but also we look at that angle with other AI generative companies, such as, for example, the AI generated pictures, where people also were trying to look for Palestinian city or a Palestinian boy, and they are always getting pictures of children in war states or in war situation, or even damaged places, destroyed cities. This kind of pictures, that the AI generated picture, it's not coming because technology is biased. It's coming because the type of data that they are using to train their systems is biased data. It reflects the global equity crisis that we are living. It also echoes the power imbalance between the Israelis as the occupiers and Palestinians as occupied people for decades. And it echoed that system. It enhanced this image about Palestinians as less than a human being, as people who are living in a destroyed place, without mentioning who's doing that and who's perpetrating that, who's killing people. So such kind of utilizing of technology and how this technology is contributing to dehumanize people is questionable. And this doesn't happen out of the blue. It happens because such kind of technology that emerge in global north countries, mainly the United States and among other countries, is basically unregulated. It's not like it might be regulated in certain states, like in the EU with the DSA and the GDPR and AI Act, among other regulations that the EU started. But in our region, we're left behind, and the policies are lagging way behind those technologies. And such kind of thing is leading to have massive amount of disinformation on the social media platforms. It also leaves us with a lot of hate speech, incitement, violent speech against minority groups and marginalized groups. And Palestinians are not alone, because even earlier this year with the Indian elections, also the Indian regime was doing exactly the same thing with the Muslim minority in India. So we're not here speaking about only Palestinians, but rather we're speaking about different marginalized communities in global majority countries who are basically struggling with the different digital divide and with the digital bias that is caused by those companies and by those platforms. And it is systematic because we're speaking about biased algorithms. We're speaking about AI generative content that is also producing or generating biased content about Palestinians, among others. We're also speaking about intentional bias, because even at the beginning of this war, Meta also lowered the threshold of the hostile speech and comments. And at that time, they usually have the threshold of 80% for the hostile speech. And in the times of war, they might reduce that to be like 50 to 40%. And they've done that exactly with the Israelis. They've made it 40% if the classifier find a similarity of around 40% hostile speech, this content might be questionable. However, with the Palestinian case, they put the classifier, or they lowered the threshold to be 25% for the Palestinian content, which basically makes them clarify a lot of content as content that is violating their community standards, leading to take down a lot of content that documents the war crimes, documents the genocide, ongoing genocide in Gaza Strip, and censoring Palestinian voices. One main problem that happened is at the night of the Babytism hospital, when they bombed Al-Ma'madani hospital. There was this main picture that was spread all over the social media platforms about the bombing itself. And one of our friends was trying to publish or to share this picture on Facebook, and she's from Egypt. She got this notification warning her of publishing that because this content might be taken down according to previous published content from other users, because it violates their sexuality and nudity policy, and it has nothing to do with that. But when we dig deep into that, and when later on we've got the Wall Street Journal piece about, or investigation about that, we figured out that the threshold, having 25% hostile speech threshold, is too low. That is basically leading to misidentifying content and basically contributing to silence our voices, preventing us from practicing our fundamental right to political participation, gathering and assembly, free speech, and even non-discrimination. So here we are speaking about systematic discrimination that has been weaponized against our people, not only during this ongoing genocide. We're speaking about a historical thing that has been done. With all that said, that doesn't mean that social media platforms have not played a really huge role during this ongoing genocide, because the mobilizing different social media platforms for solidarity and to document and to amplify Palestinian voices from our allies and friends all over the world has been very helpful. It also breaks the silos, and it breaks the isolation, because sometimes as Palestinians, we're sitting in Palestine. Many of our people also have travel bans. They are not able to move all over. So there is this kind of intentional isolation that Israel is trying to put Palestinian on. However, those pictures from the different protests all over, the encampment from different universities all over the world, is kind of breaking this isolation. It also makes us feel that this solidarity is echoing and amplifying Palestinian voices, amplifying the narrative and the messages that we are trying to convey all the time. So in this case, I know it's very helpful because it makes us also having this intersectional conversation about how we feel in those times, how we can organize or mobilize better ourselves, and how we can try to work on more organized campaigning aspects. But also we can't just be using social media platforms, ignoring all the other aspects of the tech harms that are committed or perpetrated by different companies all over the world. And as Palestinian who's working in this field, not only in Palestine, but globally, I feel I know that Palestine is a crucial part, especially with everything going on right now, but especially in this big year of democracy and where all the people are going to elect their representatives in over 65 elections around the world. Tech harms are also affecting people's choices in different countries. We've seen in South Africa, in Bangladesh, in Pakistan, in India, and we will be seeing that also in the United States and the November elections, how AI generative content, how disinformation and misinformation is playing a huge part in manipulating people and taking our communities to more extremism. So with that said, I think we can always play a role in pressuring tech platforms and especially engaging with organizations who are organizing public actions against tech platforms to force them more to be committed to their human rights policies, to business and human rights principles, and to the international human rights law. And since I believe many of the people here are working or based in the EU, and with the different European legislations as the AI Act, Digital Service Act, and the GDPR, I highly recommend that you do engage with different European organizations who might be leading strategic litigations against tech platforms in your countries. And I can remember that ELSC, which is the European Center, the European Legal Resources Center, is one of the organizations who's doing a lot of strategic litigations. So maybe you need to look at that organization and try to engage with many other organizations who are trying to hold tech companies accountable within the European Union. And because it's not only against like Palestinians, it's a crackdown on our voices, on our narratives all over. And it's a very intersectional struggle whenever it comes to spreading our narratives online. I will stop here and hand it over to Adli.
Thank you very much, Mona. As usual, you are great, and thanks for this input. This is a very interesting presentation and very helpful. And I think our colleagues and our comrades, around the world will benefit from what you have just said. And I think these were very inspiring advices because everybody is asking how they can help the Palestinians. Thank you very much. Mona, I can't be thankful enough for you to join us. I know that you have a very tight schedule and you're already in Spain with your team fighting for Palestine and for other people who are living all these operations. Thank you, Mona. Thank you very much. Now, I don't know how to start, introducing His Excellency, my friend, Dr. Hussam Zumlot. Hussam, I don't know, I can't find enough words to thank you to join us today, for joining us today. But I will read from your bio for the audience in order to understand with whom we will be listening to. I've known Dr. Hussam since we were students at Birzeit University. He was very inspiring young Palestinian student leader, leading lots of actions inside the university and outside. Now, Dr. Hussam Zumlot is now the ambassador of Palestine to the United Kingdom. Previously, Dr. Zumlot served as the ambassador to the United States, strategic affairs advisor to the Palestinian president. Dr. Zumlot held several academic positions. He worked as professor of public policy at Birzeit University, where he co-founded and chaired the Birzeit School of Government. He held a number of teaching and research positions at Harvard University and the University of London. His professional experience includes working as an economist at the United Nations and Economic Research with the London School of Economics and the Palestine Policy Research Institute. Dr. Zumlot holds a PhD in economics from the University of London. He's married and has 3 children. Thank you, Hussam, for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Hussam. We are really very grateful for, and we know that your program is very tight, but lots of people are waiting for you to speak. You are the man. Please, the floor is yours, my friend.
Shukran jazilan. Thank you, my dear, very dear Adli, for this opportunity and for the kind introduction. And my friends and volunteers, thank you for inviting me to address this very important conference on the international solidarity on Palestine, the importance of the volunteer sector, and the role of the international institutions and international law. This is a very relevant conversation, very relevant topic, not only to us, the Palestinian people, but to humanity at large. I am grateful, of course, to the organizers, and I'm grateful to the International Voluntary Service Action for Justice, the CCIVS, for inviting me, and grateful to the powerful panel. I'm really fortunate and privileged to be among such strong, impactful speakers, including Mona Shtay, I just heard just before me. What a powerful presentation, Mona. And of course, thanks to all those attending today's conference. And Adli and I, as you've just heard, go back many, many years ago, as we were students, and Adli was also working for the director of the public affairs office in Birzeit University. And in that capacity, I have come to work with Adli as a supervisor, and to really have come in close proximity, exposed to the very principle, the very idea of volunteerism. Adli, you have really been part of my national development and part of my professional development. So I thank you for that. And of course, Birzeit University itself as an icon of Palestinian nationalism, and an icon of academic achievements as well. But those were different days in Palestine. We were coming out of the first Intifada. There were, at the time, the early 90s, 1992, 1993, there were talks of secret negotiations that would eventually turn into peace agreements. You know, that was really followed by a long period of closures, curfews, a very serious struggle. We thought that we would breathe again, we would move again. So those were different times, the early 90s. In fact, one of the first initiatives with Adli at Birzeit was to organize a 500-strong volunteers from Birzeit University and other universities in the West Bank, in Najah, Beit Lahem, what have you, Hebron, to travel to Gaza, where we camped out for a week and spent our days cleaning streets, painting streets, planting trees. Was an experience of a lifetime, really. And all that was in preparation for freedom and for independence, if I may use the term. Just in 1993, when we were hearing that Yasser Arafat was coming back, the late Yasser Arafat, and the movement is coming back, and Palestine is about to be free. So it's part of who I am, the whole concept of volunteering. I remember this time very fondly, and it made me realize just how much volunteering is part of the Palestinian mindset at large. During the first Intifada, for instance, and I was a growing young man, when Israel closed schools and universities, when Israel targeted our livelihoods, that was during the first Intifada in the late 80s already. And you're following what they're doing now in Gaza, the same mindset, the same strategy. But during that time, during the first Intifada and the closures of schools, universities, including Birzeit University, by the way, teachers and professors would arrange lessons on their own, volunteering their expertise, their time, to ensure that education would continue. I took lessons at Birzeit when I first arrived in private places, in professors' homes. So the concept, the mindset of volunteering was always there. And of course, these professors, these teachers would risk being arrested by the Israelis, and some of them were arrested. And they would go to small villages to ensure that education would continue for everyone. Same, by the way, for health sector, for doctors and nurses, same for all vital sectors, volunteering. And the idea, the premise of volunteering was well established and founded in Palestine. Today, many of the first respondents in Gaza are volunteers, as you may have been following, rescue teams, of course, even doctors and nurses, mostly volunteers. Not only the vast majority are Palestinians, but also you are following many international volunteers are coming And many of them come from the UK, by the way, from Britain. And again, they're risking their lives repeatedly under Israel's indiscriminate bombardment in a territory the UN says is the world's most dangerous place for aid workers, for doctors, for journalists, for mothers, for children. But volunteering in Palestinian culture runs deeper, much deeper than as a response born out of necessity. Part of our heritage, long before Israel was established, part of our heritage is the annual olive harvest, where everyone would give their time to help farmers harvest olives during the autumn weeks when our national fruit, that is olive, ripens. I took part during Birzeit University time and before it and after it, and all of our generation and the generations before them, and I believe the generations now take part in that national volunteer program, if you may, to harvest olives. This still happens, though with the ever tightening Israel's closure in the occupied West Bank, and I'm sure Adli can tell you much more about how difficult it is to be a volunteer today in the West Bank and indeed in Gaza, of course. Reaching olive orchards is now often it's almost a suicidal mission. Very difficult. You may be shot at, you may be arrested. Extremely dangerous, but yet still our people strive to do it. Of course, the days of volunteers going to Gaza from the West Bank are long gone, unfortunately, because Israel has been imposing a draconian blockade for 17 years. But the spirit of volunteering is very much intact, and it will be very much needed when we start to address the enormous task of rebuilding Gaza after this shocking genocide that we have witnessed and still witness over the past 9 months. So my friends, volunteering for Palestine is about much more than offering critical help in reconstruction, in education, in healthcare, and in sustenance to a Gaza Strip that has been decimated by an unhinged aggression, deliberately rendering the territory unlivable. By the way, if you follow what has been happening over the last 9 months, this isn't just targeting lives, and they have murdered and maimed more than 120,000. There is a British medical magazine here that estimated the number of those who were killed by Israel over the last 9 months to be 186,000. But nonetheless, the biggest destruction was on the livelihoods, destroying all the infrastructures. I was struck by a quote on your website, on the CCIVS website, attributed to a Maori Aboriginal activist group in Australia in the 70s. And the quote goes like this: if you have come to help us, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. This really resonates with me. It resonates with us, the Palestinians. In fact, I would take it further. Volunteering in and for Palestine is not just about the work you do on the ground or in solidarity. It is about realizing that what is happening in Palestine amounts to an insult on the entire humanity. It's an insult on our very basic values as human beings. It is an insult and assault on our entire global rules based order. It is about realizing that we are at an inflection point at which we have to determine exactly what kind of a world we want to live in and what kind of a world we want to leave behind for our children. It is about realizing that we either defer to international bodies, international rules, and a shared sense of humanity, or we defer only to powerful states, to the rule of the jungle, their allies and their whims and narrow interests, as has been the case of late. It is about rejecting a world in which might makes right. Volunteering and you and what you have been doing is exactly the opposite of what has been taking place to our humanity and to our global system. And make no mistake, my friends, the fact that some of the most powerful states in the world have stood by for the past 9 months, supporting politically, legally, and materially, as in militarily, a genocide playing out in real time in front of your eyes on your screens, is an enormously significant moment in history. Very sad moment in history, and very dangerous moment in history. It is a moment like few others when we are all confronted with a deeply moral choice, if I may use this term. Where do we stand? Where do we stand? And let us be clear, the last 9 months have been replete with Israeli war crimes, from the indiscriminate bombings like only the last 48 hours. You may have followed in Khan Yunis and in Nusayrat, UN schools, shelters, families decimated. They have, as I have just said, the numbers are absolutely unbelievably staggering. 120,000. That's nearing 10%. 10% of the population, and this is not counting the indirect death and the indirect murder by the use of disease and the use of food as weapons of war, to the deliberate destruction of civilian infrastructures, including, by the way, 1/3 of Gaza's agricultural land is destroyed. 70% of Gaza's homes, 80% of Gaza's schools, 90% of Gaza's hospitals, and 100% of Gaza's universities. Just this Saturday, 100 people have been murdered in al-Mawasi in southern Gaza and Khan Yunis, an area the Israeli military itself had designated as a safe zone for refugees, for people to shelter. And that attack also saw the military deliberately target first responders, many of whom would have been volunteers like you, with jet fighters, missiles, reportedly to prevent them from saving any lives. And recorded, by the way, it's documented. This is abhorrent in every sense. And this has been the daily reality since October last year for the Gaza's 2.3 million people. 90% of whom are now homeless and are being forcibly displaced repeatedly. And you know, I hail from Gaza. I was born in Gaza. My family is in Gaza. I know how many times they have been forced to be displaced, to evacuate, to leave their homes multiple times. They send them south, then they send them north, then they send them to the middle, and all the time bombarded, killed, maimed. What we are witnessing is a genocide. Nothing describes what Israel is doing but genocide. It is a concerted and deliberate attempt at targeting an entire group of people merely because they belong to that group, while rendering our territory unlivable and forcing as many of them as possible to leave the homeland. That's the plan. Many are telling us, oh, Israel doesn't have a military plan. Israel doesn't have a political plan. No, Israel does have a plan, and they are executing their plan almost to perfection. And the plan is to make Gaza lifeless, to target the livelihood, so people have no homes to come back to, have no schools to send their kids to. This is the plan. And there is a reason the International Court of Justice, which is the highest global court, has agreed to hear South Africa's genocide case against Israel and now officially put Israel on trial for genocide. There is a reason the prosecutors at the International Criminal Court have announced that they are seeking arrest warrants for Israel's senior leadership, including Netanyahu and Gallant, for suspected war crimes. There is a reason that even the UN Security Council have passed resolutions calling for an immediate ceasefire. There is a reason every major human rights organization in the world has charged Israel with mass murder, mass destruction, and apartheid. And those are the mainstream, including Amnesty International here in the UK and the Human Rights Watch, and even Israeli human rights organizations like B'Tselem, and of course, numerous Palestinian human rights organizations. So my friend, this is not the conversation is not what is happening. The conversation is, what should we do about it? What is happening is clear. It's the gross violations of the very basic values we have as humanity. So Israel is ignored all of this. Of course, Israel has been allowed to ignore all of this for a long time. While some of its allies have taken some steps, like sanctioning a handful of settlers that are terrorizing our people in the West Bank and living illegally on occupied territory, these are feeble efforts, really baby steps at managing domestic public opinion in these countries that have taken these steps, like the US and the UK, but they are not enough. Of course, we welcome them. We want to see more, but not enough. To take just the illegal settlement in the occupied West Bank as an example, the Israel government has twice in the past 3 months announced what amounts to the biggest land grabs since 1993, the biggest in the face of all this. So we need more action. Israeli settlement project is not some minor detail. It is a direct and openly stated attempt at preventing the emergence of a Palestinian state, directly contravening the so-called global consensus for a political solution. So Israel engaged in a genocide in Gaza and still committed to its goal of total victory, between parentheses, and for them total victory is the erasure of the Palestinian people, the extermination of the Palestinian people. They lie when they say that their victory has to do with Hamas. The world is witnessing that their actual target is the families, the children, more than 16,000 children. This is unprecedented in human history. While moving forward with its project to steal our land in the West Bank. This is it. This is the situation. It is clearly and undeniably Israel that is the main obstacle to a ceasefire in Gaza. And you are all following over the last so many months and weeks that Netanyahu keeps changing the goalpost and keep maneuvering. He does not want a ceasefire. It's as simple as that, despite all the international resolutions and the UN Security Council. And it doesn't have to be this way, my friends. And I'm not going to analyze for you. We don't have much time why Netanyahu is doing this and why he feels that he has the impunity to do this. We'll discuss it later. But it does not have to be this way. All it would take is to allow the relevant international institutions to do their work, to allow the ICC to investigate and to take decisions and rule, to allow the UN to deliver aid. We have UNRWA, which is a historic UN institution, much capable and has the infrastructure to allow the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, to rule on the genocide case and to rule on our case, the state of Palestine, about the legal situation of Israel's presence in our land, which now has to be studied in a certain way. And it would take the respect that we have all of us have to respect these institutions and respect the independence of these institutions to help the ICC investigate. And I'm calling on all the international community to help the ICJ to come to a considered opinion. Let us protect our international institutions, to work to implement UN resolutions calling for an end to the settlements, the establishment of a Palestinian state, and the return of Palestinian refugees. That way lies the rule of law, my friends. That way lies the rule of law. That way lies faith in the international system. But what do we get instead? The US has dismissed the ICJ case out of hand. US legislators have threatened sanctions against ICC prosecutors and their families, like the Sopranos, literally threatening ICC prosecutors, judges, and their families to impose sanctions, as opposed to, instead of imposing sanctions on the country that is committing genocide, they are threatening. I'm sure some of you have seen the letter by a group of congressmen, American congressmen. The UK has attempted, even the UK, where I'm serving now, and I happen to have served both in the US and the UK. It's my destiny. The UK has attempted to delay the issuance of an arrest warrant at the ICC only 2 weeks ago, before the latest elections. This is shameful. It's shameful. And it makes a mockery of international law, international institutions, and our shared humanity. It undermines faith in an international system that was already seen as favoring some over others. Let me remind you that the ICC chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, made very clear that he had been told that the ICC should confine itself to investigating African countries and Russia. Can you believe the post-World War II international order is thought about to be only for the some, not all, that the rules do not apply equally? Now, our system, our order, our international order is by no means perfect. It's not perfect, but it is based on certain principles that make it immensely valuable. It is based on a conception of a shared humanity that determines rules in war and rules for state relations. It is based on a conception of law that demands equality and application, and in application. All of these principles are being undermined by Israel, and if Israel keeps getting away with a level of impunity extended to even included genocide, impunity even from genocide, we are all in real trouble going forward. All of us, not just Palestine. The world is in real trouble. That is the undeniable truth of this moment, my friends. And I want to leave you with this thought. We are all in it. We are all in it. And it is why volunteering in and for Palestine is about much more than just Palestine. To paraphrase the Maori group from Queensland earlier, to paraphrase it, this is about your liberation as much as it is about ours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hussam. Amazing and inspiring and comprehensive presentation as usual. Very impressive, full with passion. And I understand we are all frustrated from the situation, and I hope things will get easier, hopefully soon. Dr. Hussam, there are a couple of questions if you have some time just to answer them. Before the next speakers, I think we want to take the opportunity of having you with us. Okay, the question says, one of the audience have sent this question: how do you evaluate the relationship in politics cooperation between the war in Gaza, during the war in Gaza, now between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas? And if you have a vision of Hamas and the Palestinian Authority after war being together, united in decision-making for the Palestinian benefit. How to improve international support for Gaza and Palestine? Do you feel as ambassador and as a human, like calling upon the world, but like being in a desert? How do you keep hope? Thank you for your powerful speech. These are the questions. We want to really take advantage of you being with us, because I think there are many questions circulating around, and people want to hear it from you, if possible. And thanks, Habibi.
No, thank you, Adli. I'm happy to take these questions. Well, Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, first of all, the unity of the Palestinian territory and the unity of the Palestinian people is absolutely a must, a given, and it is what our people demand, and it is what we deserve. And, you know, Hamas is a Palestinian matter. It's a Palestinian matter that must be sorted based on dialogue. And as we speak, next week there will be a meeting in China, in Beijing, of the main political parties, including Hamas and Fatah, to actually engage in a serious dialogue about the way forward and about the goal that our people demand, which is the unity. But we keep saying that some of the international actors use this as a pretext to say that Palestinians are divided. The Palestinian people are not divided. The Palestinian people are united, and you've seen the last 9 months, you've seen the last 76 years, you've seen during 2021, the Sheikh Jarrah, every Palestinian constituency, be it inside or outside, have been engaged in a national struggle. And that time was a time when Jerusalem was attacked. Now it's Gaza that is attacked. So the Palestinian people do feel a sense of unity, not only because of the suffering and the aggression, but we have a unity of purpose, a unity of culture, a unity of identity. I mean, we have one of the most rooted cultures that unite us as Palestinians from wherever we come from. As for how do we improve international support for Palestine? Listen, I've been in this sort of field for some time now. I have never ever seen the level, the intensity, the diversity of solidarity with Palestine like I do now, particularly in the West. In the UK here, I am absolutely heartened and inspired to witness what I'm witnessing here, and it's very real, and it's very, very sustainable and long term. I mean, there is a coup d'etat in the public opinion. People have been, Israel has been unmasked, completely unmasked. And that has produced many very historic actions, like the student encampments in the US, in the UK, in Europe, and everywhere. And by the way, that is historic. It happens only once in a few generations. The last time it happened, it was 1968, the anti-Vietnam War. So, and I have witnessed some of them here in the UK, and I visited some of the encampments, including at Cambridge, one of the first to start the encampment in collaboration with or coordination with Oxford University. And what I saw there was so inspiring. Those are not kids, I told them in my short remarks. Those are the leaders. They are true leaders. And those are not even students anymore. They are teachers, because they have been teaching all of us what it means to be a human being and what it means to take your responsibility seriously. But it's not just the student movement. It's the workers' movement, the labor movement. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Palestine has become the epicenter of international solidarity. That's a fact. And for the first time, as a result of that, Palestine has been factoring in even domestic elections, like in the US, like in the UK, like in France. Not the main issue, but one of the issues. And historically, it hasn't been. Historically, we haven't been part of that. But now, French people, British people, American people are saying it's part of, we want to see a government and administration that commits to an ethical foreign policy, including Palestine. And it's factoring in an increasing manner. And some of you may have followed what happened here in the UK in the last couple of weeks and what happened elsewhere. So there is a growing international solidarity. The question is, how do we translate this into action? That's the question. And how do we really create something similar to the anti-apartheid movement of the 80s that have led to the freedom of South Africa, the freedom of Nelson Mandela? And I think the answer is it's happening. And I believe it's happening. It's happening. By the way, the anti-apartheid movement emanated from London. The headquarters of it was the UK. So, and what I see here in London, what I witness every other week, a national demonstration, and it has never receded, always hundreds of thousands. At one point, there was 1 million British or Britain in one demonstration. All these are historic, and they have been happening over a course of 9 months. Many argued that at the beginning, it will be the first month, the second month, but people will tire, people will be fatigued, people will be numb, people will get used to it, will be normalized. None of this is happening. To the contrary, the feeling, the emotions, the actions, the solidarity is increasing. So I am really rather inspired that this part is happening, and it's like a train. It has left the station. It's irreversible. An international movement has been built, solidified. And of course, this is not just the last 9 months during the Sheikh Jarrah 2 years ago, and it's ongoing over generations, but it has gotten to this peak moment. We have peaked. As for what is the source of my hope, the third question, the source of my hope is people like Adli and Mona, whom I heard before I came. The source of my hope is that, you know, I think Israel has failed when it was started, because the whole idea was an idea of the aboriginal groups, the indigenous groups of America or Australia or Canada, that they're gone. That was the project. And we are not gone. And we are on our land, and we are struggling, and we are defiant, and we are growing, and we have become a force. And today, no one discusses our rights. And today, Israel is isolated only with the backing of a couple of its big friends. But the course of history, the arc of justice, as per Martin Luther King, is the arc of history, is definitely bending towards justice. So the hope is the Palestinian people. What a people, what a culture, what an identity, very rooted. You are following what happens in Gaza. I mean, this is the first time in history that the people that are being genocided are documenting their own execution live on TV. They insist to document their own assassination, which has led to this phenomena of youngsters on the social media unmasking what Israel is doing. So the heroism of our doctors, of our teachers, of our people, and the ability to continue on this very long journey is the main source of hope. But there are other sources of hope. There are other sources of hope, primarily you and the people like you and what is happening around Palestine. I mean, our flag has become a global symbol. Our kufiya has become a global symbol. So there is sources of hope that after all these years, after all this suffering, Israel as a project is coming to a test. It will not be able to sustain the way it has been. Our people are not going anywhere. despite all that happened to us, we still produce one of the highest literacy rates in the world, one of the highest PhD graduates in the world. I was born in a refugee camp, my friend. I am the product of my people. I am the product of my family, of my community. They invested in us. They invested in my generation. You know, a child that was born as a result of the Nakba then becomes an ambassador for his people in Washington and London. That's the product of a people that insist to teach life, to teach love, to teach commitment to our cause, and to teach us that as a nation that has seen so many invaders come and go, we stay and they leave. That's the hope I have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hussam. Really very inspiring talk, very inspiring answers. Everybody was asking how they can help, what can we do as international voluntary organizations and activists, civil society activists and young leaders around the world. You have audience right now from Asia, from America, from Europe, from Africa. So one last, perhaps, intervention, and the next speakers have to excuse me because really I'm very fascinated, and I think everybody should be listening to that. One last advice, what can we do? They always ask, Adli, Palestinians, how can we help? What we can do? And from your position, what do you think these organizations and active individuals can do in order to uplift the Palestinian resistance and support the Palestinians by all means, and with any tools, let's say, available in their hands?
Well, there are a lot to be done, but there are two main tasks that are important. The first is to help the Palestinian people withstand this pressure. This is unprecedented in human history. I don't remember, and I'm an academic before I became a diplomat, I don't remember reading any similar story of a people that were deprived the basic means of life, like water, like energy, like what have you, and the use of disease, the use of food and what have you. So we need to focus as volunteers of how do we help in the meantime with this very important goal of survival, because in the end we have got to survive this. We have no other choice. We will survive, but we need your help. That's the first track. But the second track is more effective from where you are as volunteers in the outside, is to really lay siege on Israel's illegality. Lay siege on Israel's illegality. Suck oxygen out of the occupation and the colonization, and isolate the system of colonial occupation and apartheid. And the system has grown into genocidal entity. We need to isolate it. And this happens through sanctions, boycotts. The Israeli settlement project has got to be boycotted, banned from anywhere in the world. Any company that profits from the illegality and from the theft of land and resources must be boycotted and told off. Any settler that travels anywhere, that lives on illegal land, must not have the right to even travel and must be prosecuted. Dual citizens who now serve an Israeli army and may be taking part in the genocide must be brought to justice. And the list goes on. It's a long list. Arms embargo is a requirement. It's a legal requirement. Divestment from the illegality is a legal requirement. So there is a lot that could be done, and it's being done. These students all over the world have really managed to get their universities to divest. And there is a great deal of activism there. Please join, because so far as Israel feels that it can, so far as Israel feels it is above the law, so far as Israel feels this absolute sense of impunity, it will continue doing that. The only way to end that mindset is by attaching consequences to actions. And the consequences, if they don't come from official governments, and I'm afraid they are not going to come from official governments very soon, not from the UK government, not from the US administration. So they better come, as did South Africa, as did the anti-apartheid movement, from the people of the world. And it was the people of the world, it was the anti-apartheid movement that actually led to the end of apartheid. And the governments here in London, there in Washington, were latecomers. And by the way, they were supporters of the apartheid regime in South Africa up until the last moment. But when they realized the huge force of their own people, they gave in and they followed and they laid many sanctions on the apartheid regime. And therefore, the apartheid regime collapsed. That's what we need to do. We just need to emulate the South Africa experience and really create a movement that will make absolutely certain that Israel cannot continue subjugating another people. And the only way you could be normal is by respecting the rights of these people and respecting international law. That can come only from you, not from your government. So you have a huge task ahead of you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hussam. Thank you, Your Excellency, for answering all these questions, for the amazing presentation. Can't be thankful enough for your time. I know that you have very busy schedule, and would love really you to stay with us if you have some time, if your time allows. We have two live testimonies from two Palestinians, from Ola and from Sami, about their how is it like to live under occupation and under apartheid. Thank you very much, Dr. Hussam. Would really appreciate if you can stay with us if you wish to listen to some testimonies from young Palestinians who are living the apartheid, and they have very interesting things to say. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much on behalf of CCIVS and all the participating organizations and all the participating individuals. Thank you very much. Thank you, Habib. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I handle now the mic to Vicky to introduce our next speakers. So Vicky, back to you.
Hi, Adli, and thank you also, Ambassador, very much for your contribution. It was very inspiring. So now we go on to the part about live testimonies from two Palestinian speakers and also from Paul. So I'm going to introduce the first speaker to you, who is Ala Amro. She is an ESC project volunteer at SCI International Secretariat in Antwerp, and she's an active member of the No More War group with SCI. She's mainly interested in Euro-Palestinian local and international research and institutional activism for youth and women empowerment. So I pass the floor now to you, Ala.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today in this event. I'm Ala. I am a project volunteer at Service Civil International. I would like to share with you my story today that I carry from the West Bank. And let me just share my screen. So I am Ala. I'm from the city of Hebron, the town of Dura in the West Bank. I hope that you can see my screen now. I will start saying like where I come from. The town of Dura, it means it's the two sides, which is the city of farmers. So today I'm also like bringing a very ordinary story as a Palestinian. As you see in this map, the West Bank, the divisions, the West Bank is divided for Area A, B, and C. Area A is 18%, maybe less today, I would say, administrated by the Palestinian Authority. Area B is administrated by the Palestinian Authority, but shared security with Israel. And Area C is administrated by Israel. And this is not the map of Palestine. This is just the map of West Bank. And so my story is like pictures how my journey started. I'm coming from a family of workers. So my father and my brother, they used to work in an Israeli industry. And as a Palestinian workers in Israel, basically you have no rights. And being a Palestinian worker, it is all about apartheid and separation. So I share with you 3 pictures. The first picture here, it's the permit. So as a Palestinian worker, you need to have a work permit in Israel. Sometimes it is 24 hours, sometimes it's limited that before 12 midnight you should leave. And this is the checkpoint where the Palestinian workers had to cross every day, 4 in the morning, to be able to be there at their work 8 a.m. And as you see, the picture is very crowded. This looks like a cage. And this is just a security point. It's like showing ID, the permit, and a lot of searching, and for me, dehumanization for us as Palestinians. Sometimes workers, they're not allowed to cross the checkpoint. Sometimes just depend on the mood of the soldier, I would say, that for the workers, like close the gate, open the gate. So sometimes workers cannot cross. Unfortunately, because of the current genocide in Gaza, more than 200,000 Palestinian workers are not allowed to cross to their work. Again, the checkpoints are closed. My father and my brother, they are home since 9 months unemployed. And you would wonder if they can work in the West Bank. Unfortunately, no, because the salary in the West Bank is triple, maybe more or less than what they would have gained working for an Israeli industry. And yeah, this leads for really like families in the West Bank to be very desperate now about how they can survive, how they can live. But I would say as Palestinians, we're lucky to have this kind of community where people can think of each other and they would help and support each other. And continuing with apartheid is not only on the family level, but even for me, when I lived and studied in the West Bank, it was about separation and yeah, like difficult movement, like there is no freedom of movement. So as you see in this picture, this is the wall. It's a picture of Jerusalem, but just behind this wall, it is Jerusalem, where I cannot cross if I don't have a permit. And in order to have a permit, I need to have a reason. As a young person, you need to have like reason for medical. Sometimes tourism would work, but not always. So specific things where you can get the permits. And the next picture, this is also like it is inside the occupied territories of 48, where we crossed. And in that time I had a permit and it was only until 10 p.m. And after like 10 p.m. I cannot be in Jerusalem anymore. And it's crossing from Bethlehem. So from Bethlehem to Jerusalem is just 5 minutes walking, but it takes 2 hours from my city now, like in order to cross the apartheid wall. I just presented a nice picture of a separation wall, where this wall, we just like draw what we are dreaming of. And yeah, this is like living under occupation. It's very, especially in the West Bank, there is a lot of restrictions on the movement between the cities. It's kind of impossible. Sometimes like 5 years, I didn't cross to Jerusalem just because I don't have the permit. And I would see Jerusalem from the city of Bethlehem, where I studied. I would see it every day. And my friends will cross, but I cannot cross because I hold the green ID. So this was all the years that I spent in Palestine. It's like this for me and for my family. Then I kept applying and searching opportunities, believing that our education is our path for liberation as well, and the power of education. So I joined an international master's in European studies at the University of Glasgow. And I share like some of my experiences at this international master's. I started the University of Glasgow. I had several opportunities to represent Palestine through my master's. It's European studies, but I also connected to Palestine. And my ambition is to keep talking about Palestine everywhere I go. And at the National Capitol University of Athens, I had the opportunity to conduct my dissertation on the Greek foreign policy toward Palestine. And it was very interesting to find out that Greece or Athens have been pro-Palestine in the 1980s. And they welcomed Yasser Arafat in Athens, and they recognized the fact that Palestinians have the right of self-determination. But unfortunately, late in 2000, late 90s, the Greek policy shifted more toward aligning with the US policies. And it's all about the geopolitical factors in the region: Greece, Cyprus, Israel, and Palestine. However, I would have to say that the Greek people, or like Greek Cypriots, they're still like pro-Palestine. For me, it's just unfortunate seeing the suppression for the Palestinian activism in Athens. But I still believe that with our like fight through education and writing like new literature that really state what is the Palestinians' right everywhere, and kind of like avoiding misinformation that we have witnessed at the beginning of genocide, false information that spreads so fast. So academically, my ambition is like writing a new literature, real literature that says the truth, and I continue through like academic fight for Palestine, I would say. And not to be so long, then I joined Service Civil International in Belgium in the International Secretariat as a volunteer, and now I'm active within the movement. And as you see here, as also like have been introduced, that now I'm doing European Solidarity Corps as a project volunteer, and I'm part of so many projects where I have the opportunity to speak about Palestine. And I'm also a member of No More War working group. I had the opportunity in the last month to organize 2 film festivals for Palestine, just telling stories in Brussels and Amsterdam. And also I'm looking forward in September where we conduct a seminar for genocide prevention. And all this is like within the peace education plan where we can keep talk about Palestine in a peaceful way, because this is how you can be an activist from Palestine, to stay safe. And it's very challenging to be an activist for Palestine, not in Europe, but in Palestine. I would say recently in Europe, yes, at some point, but even before Europe and Palestine, it's really very difficult to be an activist. And yeah, this is my story. And then just at the end, I wanted to say, like, what can we do for Palestine and for solidarity, for what all this? First, I would say, like, it is a must to ensure a ceasefire. What we are seeing in the genocide is a disaster, and I don't understand why it is unstoppable till now, and why, like, the world is just watching. This is very important in my, like, we all have stories, we all, like, the West Bank is really disaster as Gaza, but a ceasefire in Gaza is must and needed. And then, in my point of view, what we need as a Palestinians, putting the Palestinian people right of self-determination into practice. It has been more like a phrase, talks everywhere, but it is the time for this to be into practice. And I'm very like, okay, it's very difficult to be hopeful, but I'm hopeful that now it is the time for Palestinians to be recognized and for our state to take place and to end the apartheid. And yeah, thank you so much. That was all. And I will pass it now to Sami. So,
Thanks very much, Ella. That was really, really super interesting sharing. So thank you for that. And now we pass the floor to Sami. Sami Houreini, who's a human rights defender, head of the Popular Struggle Coordination Committee, and member of the Youth of Smooth. He is currently facing charges in Israeli military court for his activism, and he's working in the popular resistance against the occupation. He's also the winner of the Frontline Defenders Award in 2021. So Sami, can you take the floor, please?
Thank you. Thank you, CCIVS, for inviting me for this conference, for talking here today. I would like also to thank Ala and to thank Dr. Hussam Zumlot and the other speakers for their also present today. I would like to start first with really mentioning with the current situation going on here in Palestine, and especially what's Gaza facing from genocide, how much it is very horrific and very terrorism situation over there, with the whole silence of the international community for what we are going through with the Israeli killing machine, without any consequences or without any accountability for Israel for all the crimes and the ongoing daily crimes against us, against the Palestinians. With the same time, the genocide since October started in Gaza, the same situation is also bad in the West Bank, especially where the place I come from in Masafer Yatta in South Hebron Hills. the Israeli authorities have declared the war since October against all the Palestinians wherever they are living, in order to kill and to evict as much as possible of Palestinians and to steal as much as possible of our land. I come from Musafir Yatta. My father's family is a refugee family that have been evicted from our village in Al Garitain in Naqab in Negev. They came to Musafir Yatta, and since then, in the last 40 years, like their life started to be more difficult and more hard when the Israeli authorities started to again do more practices, more violations of human rights, of our international laws, of declaring our land as a firing zone area or as a state land in order to confiscate our land and give it to settlers and to settlement. The big goal for Israel, the southern part of the West Bank, to be evicted, and all this land where we are living and our own land to be annexed to our to 48 to Naqab and to all our land in 1948. And since the last 40 years, it has been a daily struggle and a daily fight in order to defend our land and protect our land from the Israeli occupation and their settlers. The daily life, it's about a life of resistance. The daily life is about smooth story, and a challenge story. When we start talking about this area, with all the things we have been going through all these decades, from military trainings on the ground, military trainings in our land, in our homes, between our villages, preventing any services of human needs to reach to the families, to reach to the communities, destroying all water lines, roads, preventing any infrastructure to happen or to be established. So the environment of forcible transfer will be always there. Besides that, the settlers and establishing settlement, and these settlers with settler violence continue to commit daily attacks and daily crimes against Palestinians with full protection of the Israeli army, for sure. I grow up seeing all these scenes every day. I see my family fighting with the settlers, that they steal part of our land, part of my village of Tuani land, and in the daily basis, I understand that my grandmother was going to the land. I was going with her. I have to also, my father, my family, we have to all to be present in order to protect as much as possible from our land, because if we don't go to the land, we don't work the land, then they gonna take it. And this is from the small principle and the small tradition I used to do on daily basis. I was continuing and growing up in this method, that I became also an activist, and I learned all of this from my family and from my grandmother, and the same of the other villages and communities in my area. Our parents grow up us in this situation, that we have to be always staying in the land and defending the land for the last breath. And with all the violence and with all the attacks we see every day, we shouldn't give up and we should remain here. And that's what we mean with the existence itself by our own bodies and ourselves there. It is a daily resistance in order to protect the land and to defend the land. Actually, like in the 1999, there was a big crime that happened in Musafir Yatta, which was more than 15 villages have been displaced and evicted forcibly by Israel, when the Israeli military trucks has invaded the villages and started by force carrying my communities, my people, their flocks of their sheep, to throw them out from the area. But from there, the moment of the struggle started to be very strong and very clear. When the army were removing the Palestinians out, the people were going back and forth. It was a long process for months. There was a lot of work in political pressure. There was a lot of work in media pressure. This is all resulted in the end that by the 2000, the Israeli court have decided that Palestinians are allowed to go back to their land, to their court, to their by Israeli, yes, court decided this, that we are allowed to go back to the land, to the villages. But this is a temporary decision, and since then the people were back, but the daily life of forcible transfer continues to exist. When I was mentioning about military exercises or training, there is the military tank destroying the fields, the shooting of the army, live shooting. There is the explosions. There is the leftover of military that was exploding later and having a lot of people losing part of their bodies. Like I said, it's a completely the Israeli didn't want to make this place a livable place, but the determination of staying in the land was stronger than all these plans and all these policies. That's why we are still in Masafar Yatta. That's why we are still here, resisting and struggling on daily basis. By the year of 2000, and by the time of the eviction, my dad and other people in the community started to form this local committee in order to organize demonstrations, to organize the work against the occupation, resisting all this occupation plan, going back to evicted villages that even people were scared to go back to. Also, many different other initiatives were going every day to the land with organized programs, with shepherding, with grazing, with all the shapes that in order to maintain presence in the land, in order to protect it. But this is all come by individual, initiatives by the community. Doesn't have any army to protect or anything, but it's just about determination and, insisting to defend the land. We get beaten, arrested. Thanks to the international activists who come from abroad to be beside, like the people who are in Masafar Yatta, to document, to be like a live testimony for the situation. Even the activists got beaten and attacked like the Palestinian, even got arrested. But this has helped a lot to bring even more attention to the place. 2000, yes, when there was the forming of the committee, there was in 2006 the separation wall that was established in Masafar Yatta, was completely disconnecting the area from all other places of the West Bank. All the communities was struggling very hardly against this. Even I was very young, watching my father and everyone going down to the wall and protesting against it. There was a highway for the settlement, also blocking this highway, with many different, initiatives, and every time against this wall. After 2 years, like, this wall was demolished and doesn't exist anymore. But it was a great success. In the same time, wasn't the end. The occupation continued to do more settlements, more plans in order to take the land. Have been in the period of 2006. There was also establishment of new outposts in order also to take over more and more of the land. In reaching like to the year of 2017, also, like, we started to form this young body of youth from Masafar Yatta to gather in evicted villages. As I said, that have been for decades evicted. We go there in order to leave the villages, hoping to encourage families to come back. As long families doesn't come back, we will be there. We will be leaving these villages in order protecting them from settlement, because one of the villages, like Sarura, was just far, like 500 meters from the settlement. We were there living, staying. Was very difficult time, and we were all beaten, arrested as young generation. But we continue to be to resist there and exist there, destroying all these plans of taking over the land. And also, we started to be one of the main leading for the demonstrations and for the popular work in general against the occupation. Also, we have been working a lot in advocacy. We have been abroad in several countries, trying to help as much as possible with the public events, raising awareness of the situation, trying to involve politicians to make pressure against the occupation government to stop the eviction in Masafar Yatta. Because, and this is especially, we worked hard a lot on it in 2022, when there was the eviction again after 22 years, when there was a decision in the 2000, but in 2022 there was a new decision by the Israeli court that 8 villages in Masafar Yatta must be demolished and must be evicted for a firing zone area. But this is didn't happen until the moment. This didn't happen until the moment, because of all this work and because of all this mobilization of work in the ground, and because of the pressure we were doing abroad. But we are worried now during the war that Israel will take advantage, while there is no spotlight on in the area to do it, because as we see a lot of crimes daily basis, from settlers violent, from home demolishing in a crazy way by Israel, and also like killing a Palestinian, because it became something they try to normalize it. We continue to confirm we should never accept this reality. We should never give up to fight against the occupation. This is an example of the occupation that has like really all the support, all the power of the world, but also facing with great people, continuing every day. We, the Palestinians, facing and challenging this, and hopefully we will continue forever to resist. As Dr. Hassam Zomrod said, a lot of occupation came to Palestine, and all of them left, and we remain, and we will continue to remain, and we hope to continue to receive the support of the international community for all the people who are demonstrating abroad, for all the work that it's going on abroad is very important and very encouraging, and also to have also people in the ground in like communities like Musafir Yatta. It's a way also for supporting the strength of the people. People are there. People just need someone to be beside the communities in order. We count these days a little bit, not so much, but in the international presence to be like a tool to fight the occupation, because for them, in the end of the day, still a Palestinian is attacked or injured, it's okay, or killed, but for an international to be injured, it's not such an easy thing. But this is also in a way to bring more like attention, to bring more spotting light for the reality of what we're living right now. In West Bank, there was 25 villages until now since October evicted in the north, and some are in the south. There was also a lot of land stealing. There is a lot of new steps that Israel and the settler managed to do in the ground, but we are still here, and with all this difficult time, we are still fighting and resisting. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Sami. People like you who are on the ground and fighting day to day, it's, well, I just hope that one day we'll see a free Palestine, and it's down to all of the people on the ground who are surviving, who are fighting, who are continuing. So thank you very much for your sharing today. And we'll come back to you also in the Q&A. We've got some questions for you. So I'm just going to pass the floor now to Paul Winter, who's going to highlight a bit how these experiences illustrate broader issues of racism and apartheid. Paul is the Deputy Chair of Volunteer Action for Peace UK. He's a volunteer in international projects since 1958. He was working in Zambia from 65 until 69 as an acting headmaster and co-founder of the secondary school. He's a lawyer, civil servant, legal draftsman, member of the Haldane Society of Socialist Lawyers. So Paul, can you please take the floor?
Thank you, Vicky. This has been a tremendous session, and it's very humbling to find much that I can add to what's already been said. But if there is something, I can do it, perhaps speaking especially to my colleagues of Western countries. And the first thing to point out is responsibility. And we do have an enormous responsibility for this appalling situation. And the United Kingdom, perhaps more responsibility than many others. And I will, in a while, give you a few ideas of what we should be doing, might be doing, to pressurize our own governments, our own authorities on living up to their responsibilities in all this situation. I understand there are some questions still that to be answered. The first one is, what are the strategies that an individual can implement to avoid racism? Well, that's, if you like, the hardest question first. But believe me, I'm not joking when I say I think you have the best strategy in front of you now. Join an IPYL work camp, join international volunteering all over the world. Why? Because racism is founded in fear and in ignorance and fear. And if you will travel, if you will go to other countries and deliberately seek out peoples who may appear strange to you, their religion may be different from anything you've experienced, how they dress and how they eat, and so much is different. but my experience has been that when you come to them, you will find that family life is so similar everywhere in the world, and enormous hospitality from people who have the least as well is what you will enjoy. And how can you be a racist when you experience the sort of wonderful things that I have in so many countries of the world? And so I really say, for the individual to avoid racism, address your ignorance, go and find out, live with other people, and know how it is. Laws discouraging racism, and one is mentioned here, which is called the General Equal Treatment Act. Now, I believe that's an act in Germany, but other countries have similar acts to protect from racial discrimination. It is fairly recent, and one has to follow these things through the courts, and one may look at issues like racial profiling. Why is it that police or other authorities seem to be picking on particular groups, and is there any reason behind that racial profiling, as well as how it actually works out? The other questions we've been looking at involve the terms of apartheid and racism. Now, apartheid was a legal and administrative system in South Africa which separated Black, Asian, and colored peoples from so-called whites. Now, it was discriminatory in that only whites had a direct say in the national government of the country. It was also racist in that advantages and privileges were enjoyed by whites over other groups. If I look for that word apartheid has now been given a general wider meaning, and for me, really, apartheid is the practical application of racism. If racism is an attitude of mind, then apartheid is a formalized system of practical racism, which is crystallized in law, in regulations, in administration, and in practice. But for a third meaning, apartheid is now actually defined in law, in international law, as a crime under the 1988 Rome Statutes. And that's the statute that set up the ICC, the International Court, which has actually indicted 2 government ministers in Israel and 3 Hamas officials. And they have jurisdiction to prosecute individuals. Now, the ICC, the International Criminal Court definition of apartheid is that it includes inhumane acts committed in the context of an institutionalized regime of systematic oppression and domination by one national group over any other racial group or groups, and is committed with the intention of maintaining that regime. If I come to what we are actually seeing now happening in Gaza and in all its in all the terror that we're seeing, it is essentially an imbalance of power and a refusal to employ any accepted rule of law. And we see this particularly in the policy of assassination. And of course, it goes back long before Gaza. But in Gaza, this policy of assassination is used as a reason for the mass killings. But even if it were to be a legal way of going about, of course it's not, because there is no attempt to arrest suspects. If people are suspected of serious crime, they must be arrested and brought before properly instituted courts. But that's not what happens. Instead, massive bombs, 1-ton bombs, are used purportedly against an individual, but those bombs kill 20, 30, 40, up to 50 people at one time. They're completely inhumane. Just before this Zoom meeting started, I was playing with my one-year-old great-granddaughter. It was a delightful time, and she was laughing, and we had great fun. And then I turn here and think of Gaza, where so many children have been killed, have been maimed, have lost limbs, and I just can't get my mind around that appalling situation. All right, I have to be quick. So to finish quickly, what I want to do is to run through some things which I would ask everyone, particularly in the West, to ask the authorities, their governments, and other authorities in their country to pressurize them. One is the Red Cross. Red Cross is being denied access to prisoners in Israel, taken in the West Bank or Gaza. And you must petition them that is so, and there must be an end to administrative, what the Israelis call administrative detention. It is, in a way, a kind of hostage taking. People are being locked up and taken almost without reason. They're in their hundreds now that is happening. So tell your government to petition the Israelis to bring an end to hostage taking. Most importantly, those governments, like the British government and the Americans, which supply weapons, must be told that nothing will affect the Israelis more than to suspend the supply of weapons to them and make them see that another way is necessary. Similarly, UNRWA funding has to be restored. It's many years ago that I went into Gaza myself and saw what it was like, and that's more than 30 years ago now. But I went in with an UNRWA official who's also a Quaker lady, a lady who belonged, a Palestinian lady belonging to the Society of Friends, and that the whole of UNRWA should be suspended and blackballed is ridiculous. If people in UNRWA have committed crimes, then as individuals, they need to be arrested and prosecuted. Just indeed as in this country, certain members of the Metropolitan Police have committed awful crimes and have been arrested, but nobody has suggested that the whole Metropolitan Police must be abolished because of it. So please restore UNRWA. The question of the International Criminal Court arrest warrant, and His Excellency made reference to this. The most ridiculous argument put forward by the UK government to the court was that because Palestine had made some kind of agreement in the Oslo Accord that Palestine would have no ruling over actions by Israelis on their territory. Therefore, they had given up permanently any kind of pushback against whatever happened to them. In other words, that Israelis, settlers could do what they liked, and they would have no recourse whatever. That is so ridiculous that I'm really hoping that will very shortly be withdrawn. And of course, we must have an immediate and sustainable ceasefire with a release of all the hostages, all the detainees. I think really the matter has gone so far that a UN peacekeeping force would be the best people to go in there and see that calm is restored. What we're looking for is peace with justice. And perhaps most importantly is to recognize the state of Palestine. And recognizing the state of Palestine is not anti-Israeli, let alone anti-Semitic, because recognizing the state of Palestine is to recognize that both Israel and Palestine have a right to security. They have a right to secure borders. They have a right to live in peace. And they have a right to liberation. So maybe I can finish on that point, though I'm happy to come back with any questions that that you wish to put now, as no time is pressing. Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you very much, Paul. I really appreciate your intervention. So just to explain to everyone, we're going to go into the question and answer now. It's going to be only on the chat. And we've also had questions in advance on the online form, which have been collected. In parallel, there'll be a Padlet, which is in place where you can share your ideas. And I'm going to pass the floor now to Albanoy, who's going to explain how the Padlet's going to work.
All right, so can you just confirm that everyone can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. I'm Albanoy. I'm the communication volunteer here at DIS, and I'm gonna shortly walk you through how to work the Padlet. I will share my screen now. Okay. Do you see the screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Let me just send this link. Okay, so if any of you are familiar with Google Jamboard, it's kind of a similar idea. We're going to use this space to kind of gather our thoughts and kind of share insights and interact with each other. We have three different columns. So one of them is accountability in communities. And this is about how we can brainstorm ways to promote accountability in communities and through international efforts. The second one is about awareness and policy changes, which we can use to find practical steps that can be taken to enhance awareness and drive policy changes. And the third and the last one is the one about developing actionable strategies to undertake in support of Palestinian rights. It's quite simple. There is a plus on the lower right end of the screen. You click and where it says subject, you just put a title. So I will just put title. And here where it says write something beautiful, you will write a certain opinion or something you want to share. Like I think this. And then you just code it with the corresponding color. So if it's something about practical steps to enhance awareness, you put it in green. If it's about accountability in communities, you put it in red, and so forth. And then you just click publish. And then within this little thing, we can have mini discussions. If you just click the button here, which is the little icon that's a comment button, and you can comment, I don't know, I agree or I disagree. But what do you think about, or whatever is on your mind. You can also give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Also to comments. No, I guess not. And yeah, I encourage you to use this space to kind of share your thoughts, and what you think, and yeah, discuss with each other. And I hope it's a fruitful Padlet discussion. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you. So just to go back then into the questions, Ala, are you with us?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. Can you reply to the questions about how to help? So how can we help through volunteering, volunteering online or in any other way?
So yeah, I would say, again, like for us as Palestinians or even as internationals everywhere, we just find it very difficult to what we can do and we are feeling like helpless. especially for Gaza. But in my point of view, raising awareness, keeping education, being active and advocating for the Palestinian right of self-determination, this is very important. And I can see that our sharing words and sharing that we stand against this apartheid, it is helping and making more the international community to listen to us and to pay attention and to do efforts in really giving self-determination for Palestinians. So as youth worker, youth activist, might be a trainer, educator, or even an academic, whatever small effort I would do in this, advocating for the Palestinian cause, for me, it is a source of help that keep us hopeful, at least, that we are not forgotten, because the Palestinian cause was forgotten for so many years. And people are thinking that it started on October 7th. However, it didn't start in that. So our help is just reminding the world all the time that it has been 76 years of occupation, and we can help by making the people realize that this is an occupation and this is an apartheid system that had to be destroyed. Yeah. And
Okay.
is
Thanks.
there another question?
So the final question is how can we be more effective or practical in our support?
In my point of view, whoever can take an action to support, for example, our gathering today with the CCIVS, it is a supportive step for Palestine. I mean, any action, I would say, is on individual, community, or institutional level, or these steps are important, are in contributing to better understanding, for better development for Palestine. And it's very important as well, in my point of view, to keep ensuring on a ceasefire and the importance of stopping the genocide. And if all our efforts are directed towards stopping the genocide, then we can save more lives, ensuring that human rights as well something that really exists, because we doubted after what we have witnessed if really human rights exist, or children rights as well, considering the fact that massacres are continuous in Gaza now. And people, I would say people collective agreement on what is real human rights, what is humanization of Palestinians, what is children rights, and what steps that we can keep ensuring in order to in order to end the apartheid, to end the genocide, and give the Palestinians a right to exist on their land. And considering our platform, I would say it's educational, but whatever we can take it to the street and can be done on the ground, this is also great, and it is appreciated.
Thank you very much, Anne.
Thank you.
Okay, so Sami, are you still with us? I don't know if I can see Sami still there. Sami?
Yes,
Yeah.
sorry, yes.
Great. Hi. Okay then, so a question for you that came in through the online form was how to organize a solidarity campaign in favor of vulnerable groups in Palestine. And again, how can we be more effective and practical in our support? And also that people are asking a bit more what's happening in the country.
Yes, for us here, we already did a conference on the 9th of July in Ramallah for the announcement that we are starting to receive an international activists in Palestine to be in solidarity and to stand with the people in all Palestine in front of the settler violence and in front of the army harassment against the Palestinians in the communities in the West Bank in general. And this is one of the actions. It's called Faz'a. We can share the campaign if anyone interested and want to sign and want to join us Also, we do trainings, and then we start to spread people in the field, in the Jordan Valley or in Nablus area where there is the attacks of the settler, or to Masafir Yatta, whatever the need is. And this is like one direct action I would suggest if anyone is interested in this, that we can people express support and solidarity in the ground. And I would also recommend that such event, I think I would recommend that a lot of people should follow your step and continue to organize many Zooms in this way to talk to people, to continuing in this way to raise awareness and also involve more and more people to the cause of Palestine. In the other hand, I would recommend also the messages and communication with the politician in the countries outside to make pressure in the decision maker to change all these decisions of hypocrisy with Israel, to stand with Palestine, to stop the current situation of what's going on in Palestine. This is a very practical step. I would suggest that it can be done by everyone in order to continue to raise awareness. And I think journalism is very important. Also, door we have to knock very hard and work on it, to communicate with journalists, to ask journalists to speak about the situation, to take live testimonies from Palestine, from Gaza, from even Palestinian or abroad, to continue to work to use this tool of media and these journalists in order to continue to help in raising awareness for the situation. Solidarity work, it's important. Sometimes it's weak, sometimes it's strong. As my friend said, like October brought the Palestinian cause back to the international stage. And this is an important moment. We see a lot of people are listening about Palestine and start talk about Palestine, because in the last years, Palestine, yes, I confirm again, Palestine was forgotten, and now it is the moment where everything is uprising, and it's a very good moment for building in every place, in all the countries outside who are organizing the work for Palestine. It's a good moment to start to strategize the work, to put strategy, a long-term strategy for how the war should continue in this way, and stronger and bigger. And whatever the support that need from here for the solidarity group, it would be important. Even people who want to come also for visit, it's very important to see, to tell, to talk. We also appreciate even each single step that someone come, see, live the situation, go back to tell for friends, family, growing up to the circles where he's active in. This is a very important thing. We build on it to the top, to the political level, which is always the problem. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
You had something else you want to add?
Did I forget the other part of the question? I think I didn't hear it well. Sorry.
So it was just
or did it?
Yeah, it was the same as the LS. So how can we be more effective and practical in our support? What's happening in the country? Yeah, and how to organize the solidarity campaign. This was like the three.
Yeah. Like I mean, in here in the ground, what's going on exactly right now is the most difficult part, especially in the West Bank, is the aggression of settlers, and what is the daily basis is a nightmare. I'm talking about just family level, that we are every day in fights and in problems with the settlers, organized militia that is every day targeting us and other families and other communities with daily raids, with daily attacks, bringing the soldier to protect them, putting the families in arrest. So this is the thing I would say in the ground, which is arresting, beating, everything. And this is the most very horrific moment and on the ground, which need some presence of different activists to be in the field. In the other hand, yes, the international in the countries, as we saw, we have a great example, like the student they did in Columbia University in the US and other initiatives was super amazing, and I would recommend such activities like this. Is always important, how to focus on the youth generation in the outside countries, in order that they all can be joining the solidarity movement for Palestine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Adli, a question for you. So, do the cul-de-sac in reaching at least ceasefire reflects the overall failure of multilateral strategies for peace? We've not seen any real effect of UN statements resolution, nor of ICJ's judgment. Does that imply that these international facilities are ineffective in the face of a state's aggression and apartheid?
I think there is nothing called multilateral strategies for peace. All what had been happening was scam, giving time for Israel actually to proceed in its ethnic cleansing and bring about all the coverage, the time, give the time for Israel to continue in what it has been doing. But at the end of the day, there is nothing called dead end, or like closed road, at the end. There is always hope, If you all remember, like during the apartheid in South Africa, it sounded like super impossible that this apartheid will vanish, but it happened. All what I think is needed is to keep up the hope. This is first, because we are right, because our fight, all of us, not only the Palestinian right, but as IVS organizations, we usually work on hope, and there is always hope. I think there should be a will, among the states to a will and enforce a ceasefire in a way or another, but without being, hypocrite and without losing the compass, because like if you rightly condemn Russia for bombing hospitals and killing children, but at the same time you sell arms to Israel when they are destroying hospitals in Gaza and killed so far more than 14,000 children and counting, then it's pretty simple. You lost the compass. You lost your very existence as human beings and caring humans. The other part is that I think the United Nations is becoming an impotent organization, inefficient. As George Orwell said, in Animal Farm, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others, and this applies to the states. The powerful states, they are more equal than the other nations. And it seems that this United Nations is only there in place for the poor countries and the third world countries to whine and to cry and to share their concerns and I don't know what and that, but without any kind of influence on the ground, because everything is centralized and monopolized by the Security Council. And the Security Council, as we know, the 5 veto holder states, they can really veto any resolution whatsoever. So if you are from a powerful country, you can really impose anything. And we have seen what happened in Iraq, what happened in Libya, what happened in Yemen. In like less than 24 hours, they issue and ratify, resolutions with Action 7, whatever, immediate interference, military interference in changing the regimes over there. I think what is needed is a will, like there should be a will and an enforcement of the principles that the international community stands for, and I think the conditions to establish the United Nations after the Second World War have changed right now. The rules of the game have changed, and I think there should be a very significant change in the role of the Security Council and the United Nations to be more efficient and more effective by enforcing ceasefire on in any situation. At the same time, like for instance, if we look what happened in South Africa, I think the grassroots movement around the world was the pioneer. They were the pioneers actually in fighting, the apartheid and rejecting the apartheid. But at the same time, if we look at the political map now, all the states that supported the apartheid regime in South Africa are the same, more or less the same states that are supporting Israel in their ethnic cleansing and the apartheid regime that they are imposing in Palestine. This hypocrisy of these countries that on one hand, they just support the Ukrainians, which is, okay, Nobody is against that. But at the same time, selling weapons and like donating weapons and arms to Israel to bombard hospitals and infrastructures, as we have been saying since the beginning, I think this is really a schizophrenic situation. And at the same time, what I want to conclude with is that every missile, every bombardment that the Israeli Zionist army bombard Gaza, I think it pulls a thread that a similar missile is launched at the Western civilization and culture, because it's shaking it from the roots, isolating the individuals in the West and showing them that you have a fantastic culture, we are doing fine, we have democracy, we have freedom of expression. I think all this has been stepped on by the bombardment of Gaza, supported by their nations and by the so-called Western culture or Western civilization. I think this had to stop, and there should be more serious role for the states plus the civil society organizations. Unfortunately, let me just remind you that not all the civil society movement in the world are taking real serious part in the demonstrations and in protesting what's going on in Gaza. But most of the organizations that are taking part in these demonstrations and protests are coming from grassroots organizations. And this is okay, good, but still, when you talk about trade unions not involved, when you talk about huge organizations and international organizations that are influential, that they are not playing any role, like you can see all these international humanitarian organizations, they are unable right now to enter Gaza or to enter one injection, one medicine, one milk for 1 liter of milk for the children. I think they have to sit and look in the mirror and see and review what their mission is and where they are standing, and without really giving us all these moral lectures, about the morality and how the world should be functioning whatsoever. I think if they are unable to produce supplies and to bring in supplies and help the people in Gaza and put pressures on their governments, on Israel, on the United Nations institutions and agencies, I think their role is void. I don't think that anybody would need them. I think this is a big question. It's a very big question. Very hard for me to answer why the ICJ, is unable to enforce its decisions. I think the answer could be very simple. Because there are superpowers who are not interested in doing that, and they are very complicit. They are complicit with the genocide, and they are giving all the carte blanche for Israel to continue in its massacres and carnage around the clock. I hope I have answered the question, and I hope this genocide will be a wake-up call or a slap, on the faces of everybody, just to stand up and just say something and do something about it. I think it's time, it's enough, I don't know how much more blood Israel and the Zionists and the United States want to see before they really stop this ethnic cleansing. It's unbelievable, hard to imagine really that this is happening on the 21st century in broad daylight and in front of TV and media. That's really shame. It's shame for all the humanity, it's really shame. And I hope this will stop very soon. But always we keep the hope that peace will come one day. And this is a very necessity, and this is a very human feeling. And if we lose hope, I think we will become something else. And we don't want to become something else. That's all.
Thank you, Adley. Just whilst you're here, there's a short question, which I think you can reply to. So is it possible now to access Palestine for international volunteers through Tel Aviv airport, or is it better to travel through Jordan?
Yes, it's possible to come through Tel Aviv, but recently the Israelis. This is why we had to cancel a couple of work camps. That was planned for July and August. but they really have more strict security measures, on internationals coming to Palestine through Israel, through the airport, and even through Amman. Yesterday I heard like 2 Belgian guys who supposed to come and visit us. They've been sent back to Jordan. So it's quite, hard to tell. Like it also depends on the mood of the officer at the passport control. Whether to let them in, to let the volunteers in or not. But hopefully we'll try to organize some kind of study trip, hopefully sometime end of September, beginning of October, for those who want to really come and live I don't want to say the adventure, live the ambiance, of being in an apartheid. But we're hoping that the security and safety situation will allow. And all the time we provide, let's say, security briefings to the volunteers or the visitors who are coming down. It's quite really hard to tell if it is possible or not these days, but if there's a matter of 2 or 3 people coming down, I think it won't be that complicated. But when we have a work camp with 20 volunteers and only 2 or 3 show up, I think that would be a problem.
Okay, thank you very much, Adli. So just a final question that Paul is going to take, and then we'll close. We're over time, but if you've got time to write for this, and then just the closing, and we'll be following up with you in any case by email with any links from any of the speakers. So Paul, there's a question on the chat. And it says, the US and UK have enacted new legislation as to what constitutes anti-Semitism. Previously, it was merely activities targeting Jews, whereas now it is any activity or speech against Israel or criticism of Israel. What has been done to counter this new form of oppression?
Thank you. Just quickly, I think this refers to the Holocaust Memorial definition of anti-Semitism. And briefly, anti-Semitism itself is hatred of Jews as Jews, and that is a form of racism and completely unacceptable and intolerable, and we should not allow it. As I understand it, the definition itself is acceptable. What has given rise to difficulty is the examples, and it's given examples, and those examples do include a couple where there is criticism of Israel. But to my mind, that does not mean that all criticism of Israel can be anti-Semitic. And I would just recommend, if you're criticizing something, and we've had so many examples this afternoon of matters on which to criticize, as I've criticized myself on the indiscriminate bombing and killing of innocent civilians. Now, I criticize the government, I criticize the Israeli military for that. I don't criticize them because they're Jews, I criticize them because of what they're actually doing. So if you're specific in your criticism, I can see no problem at all. I would make the same criticism of Russian bombing of Ukraine or Tatmadaw bombing of civilians in Burma. So just be careful than making generalized criticisms of Israel. Yes, it's not very good, but there are plenty of specific things that we can be very critical of there, and we need to name them when we criticize Israel, and that is a perfectly fair, non-discriminatory way of speaking about these atrocities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you for everyone for your replies in this Q&A question session, and thank you for everyone that also sent the questions in. I'm going to hand the floor over to Rutherford now, who's going to wrap up on behalf of CCIVS. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Vicky. As we conclude this powerful webinar on International Vulnerable Service, Action for Justice, exploring the responsibility and accountability in the struggle against racism and apartheid in Palestine, I want to take this opportunity to express my deepest gratitude to each and every one of you for your participation engagement, and commitment to this critical cause. We have heard from incredible speakers, experts, activists who shared their insights, experience, strategies for effective solidarity. They shared about the day-to-day life and atrocities that are being committed in the Gaza Strip, such as the gross human rights abuse through denying people in the Gaza Strip and West Bank education, food, water, and medicine, such as systematic discrimination and segregation under the Israeli occupation, racism on economic policies, violence and military occupation, the destruction of livelihood in the Gaza and the West Bank. 1/3 of the Gaza Strip and land have been destroyed. It's no longer productive. We also hear that about 100% of university education has been destroyed in both Gaza and the West Bank. 90% of Gaza Strip and West Bank also have been destroyed. So this is a very huge challenge for all of us. And we also heard that Gaza Strip and West Bank have become the largest open prison in the world, being attacked by bombs through air, land, and by sea. But hope is not lost. There was an incredible example of South Africa that the masses took ownership of the revolution. Even though when the masses in South Africa take ownership of the revolution, it was not fashionable to do so. The international regimes, the powerful countries, were also on the side of the apartheid, just like what is happening in Israel now. But because of the power within the masses, they keep on the fire burning. And right now we talk in South Africa as the fall of apartheid. So I think we need to continue as the masses to spread the message across the world so that people, they know what is happening in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. I think we also managed to touch on the complicity of racism and apartheid on digital action by a powerful regime. I think we found out that there's digital censorship. There's also artificial intelligence generated pictures which are dehumanizing the Palestinian people. There's also digital divide and bias in the mass media, where the projection of what is happening on the ground in the mainstream mass media is not being reported like it's just reported like just something normal. They are not the powerful media. They're not doing their job, including the international regimes such as the ICC. And also, we have seen that there's a lot of lip service offered by the international regimes when it comes to ceasefire. They just talk about it, but there's no action being implemented. So, as CCIVS, the International Volunteer Service, will be very happy to have talked. We would love to have ceasefire like yesterday. It's too late. We wanted to have it long time before. We have denied. We have not actually denied it. We have just denied the people of Israel their basic human rights. I also want to leave you with the final few thoughts, which I think they will help us going forward. I think it is important, as Paul said, that it is important for us to recognize the state of Palestine so that we can secure both Israel and Palestine. I think it's important that we, as the international community, should recognize the state of Palestine so that we can secure both countries. I think there's also need for responsibility and accountability, not just as a concept, but as an action that require our collective efforts and dedication. And also there's need for solidarity, not as a passive gesture, but as an active commitment to justice and basic human rights. I would also like to ask you, if you have the possibility, please donate to the Gaza using our donation button on the CCIVS web page. Your money will be used to support the people of Gaza. You can also look at the CCIVS page for Palestine Solidarity that provides different resources, testimonies, information about CCIVS projects in Palestine. Let us carry this energy, passion, and knowledge from the webinar into our daily life, our community and our communities and our work. Let us continue to educate ourselves and listen to the amplifying voices of those who are most affected by this situation which is happening in Gaza. Do not forget that atrocities that are happening now, the people of Palestine need our support so that whatever is happening may never be forgotten. And those responsible will be held accountable. Let us also continue to work together towards a world that values justice, equality, and human rights for all. And let me also take this opportunity to emphasize that we should continue solidarity, actions, policy, and advocate, and also continue to have educational initiative which can help us to overcome this challenge which we are having. I think on this note, I would also like to challenge all of us that we should come out now with actions which we should encourage and continue some collaboration in the near future. I thank you all. Vicky?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to all of the people who participated in this event today.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work. Thanks for all the audience. We still have like 36 people until now. That's really amazing. And I think it was worth all the time. And it means that we had let's say, a very fruitful meeting, which I hope that we will have some kind of practical outcomes and some practical steps in order to stop this genocide. Thank you all for all the efforts. Thanks for CCIVS. Thanks for you, President. Thanks for Paul. Thanks for all the audience. Sami, Ala, everybody who was with us. Thank you so much on behalf of Palestine. And really, this is a great achievement by CCIVS, a great favor that we will never forget, a great support that we will never forget at all. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for all those who stayed with us. And I hope, and whoever has a question, you can always contact me. I'm talking to the audience. Feel free to contact me anytime. And thank you from Palestine. Thank you. Long live the struggle against imperialism. Yeah, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.